Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to each and every one of you to Barrens Chat. This is episode 1, of course, of Barrens Chat. Now, most of you will remember that I used to have a live podcast thing, something called The Shill Show, where we would discuss lore and we would basically just spend hours and hours and hours doing lore discussions. I then sort of left that as I started focusing a lot more on Twitch and a lot more streaming on Twitch. And since everyone could just ask me questions on Twitch about WoW lore anyways, I sort of started running into problems where by the time the Shill Show came around, I had already done about 30, 40, like, World of Warcraft theories for the week. So I had very little left for Shill Show. And then also, you know, we had like a very, very long dry spell with WoW lore, especially towards the end of Shadowlands. There was just very little to cover. And so I sort of retired that show just because there wasn't really anything to do. The Barrens Chat is something sort of similar, but also something new, right? It's about WoW lore, obviously, but it's more... The reason I chose the name, Barrens Chat, is for those of you that used to play from the days of Classic. Well, remember the old school Barrens Chat, where just about everything goes, where you can discuss things and you can just about discuss anything, as long as it's about World of Warcraft. That's going to be the one caveat to this entire thing. I'm, of course, going to have theories available for you every single week, or at least things to discuss, be that news, be that gameplay, be that whatever. But then also, I want to hear from you. I want to talk to you. I want to hear your thoughts on my videos, on my theories, on your theories, so that we can discuss things and so we can sort of deep dive and nerd out for a little bit about World of Warcraft, because that's why we're all here. And since I don't do a lot of World of Warcraft on the main Twitch channel anymore, it just sort of makes sense, right? Twitch is now more about just whatever, right? We basically react to Warhammer stuff and we react to gameplay stuff and we do all manner of other conversations over on Twitch. This seems like a good time to bring things back to the main channel. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to each and every one of you. I really hope that you are going to enjoy it. Before we get started, or before we get stuck in, I guess there is a little bit of a conversation that we have to have. It's a tiny thing. It's a tiny thing. It has to do with the new patch. The new patch that we, of course, know nothing about. It is 10.26. What do you guys think? Like, just right off the bat, chat. What's your thoughts on 10.26? The way 10.26 has been handled. The fact that we had this pirate flag for a long time, and that was pretty much the only thing we knew about it. And now, you know, we obviously have the announcement that it is going to be a limited time event of some kind, right? We're not still actually sure what it is. We know there's a bunch of dungeon changes, and we'll talk about the dungeon changes in a minute. But I want to hear just from you guys, what are your thoughts right off the bat about 10.26 and the fact that this is the first patch ever where we have had no time to test this on the PTR, and then just how it's going live, right? What do you think? If it goes poorly, it will be a shame because they will never try it again. I hope it goes well. Katie, that's a valid problem. I don't think it's going to be anything bigger than stuff like Azerothian Archives, but going in blind is awesome. I feel like it's going to be a huge disappointment for most people. Blizzard have hinted at it and hyped it up so much. People got their expectations way too high. My own expectation that it's hopefully going to be less disappointing than the reclamation of Guild. Hey, I mean, to be fair, I think the reclamation of Gilneas, I fully understand that it was definitely not, I think, what a lot of people expected it to be. The way I looked at the reclamation of Gilneas specifically is that in a bubble, viewed just purely as a thing that happened, it was just fine. The problem, of course, is there's a shit ton of history. Alliance players specifically have been waiting years for this moment. And it's viewed in that specific framework, yes, absolutely. It was kind of abysmal, right? It was sort of this thing where it didn't feel like a reclamation. There was no real siege. There was no real, big grand gestures of battles and stuff going on. It really did feel like just another bit of go kill a couple of guys, collect a couple of things, and then go home. Thank you for helping us reclaim. And then there's also not even like a big thing about this becoming a new hub city or a new main city, or I don't know. It just felt like there should have been more, towards the reclamation of Gilneas. I do agree, of course, with what's been said thus far. I love it. Just FYI, right off the bat, I have been one of the biggest proponents of the PTR being completely overused in World of Warcraft, to the point where you have no idea how soul-crushing it is to me when I look on Twitch and I see the top streamers on Twitch are all playing the PTR for weeks and months before the actual patch goes live. So much so that by the time the actual patch goes live, they're already asking Blizzard, when's the next patch coming on? And it's sort of like we're supposed to have a shared feeling of enjoyment and discovery on the day that it finally goes live, right? That's the whole point of playing an online game, is that shared feeling of everyone going to a new place for the first time ever and experiencing everything that's new and shiny for the first time ever. But then it's not really new and shiny. Every YouTuber has made 500 videos covering every little bit of detail of the new PTR. So that by the time it goes live, it really feels more like you're just finally seeing everything implemented that you've already known would be there. So I've always been a massive fan of the idea of going into World of Warcraft PTR-less and seeing what that entails. What I didn't consider, and what now becomes apparent, is the fact that this is the first time Blizzard is doing it means that a lot of players have a lot of expectations, right? There's the expectation. Let's be real. Most of us are sort of in the back of your mind. You are sort of thinking, I wonder, this is going to be huge. This is going to be huge. And, it's going to be one of those, ooh, no, right? That's what most of us are thinking. And of course, if it isn't that, if it is sort of like, is it out yet? That's going to be super bad. Right? That's going to be like such a bad moment. And it's dangerous because Blizzard they've pissed people off during this. I don't know if you guys were a part of that, but on Twitter, people were losing their minds. I was far too busy fighting other fights to give a shit about it. But there were people losing their minds over Blizzard just being way too quiet, not talking to the community, all manner of stuff that was going on. By the way, I was far too busy researching Morn weapons and sort of stupid old lore to even care about it. But there were a lot of people that were super outraged by it. And so now if this thing fails, it feels like there's a lot riding on this. And that, I think, scares me ever so slightly. Given how cookie cutter WoW's patches have been recently, even without PTR access, we could predict most of it. Go farm some rares, get a reputation resource up, purchase some cosmetics. So do you guys want my prediction for what I think it's going to be? Now, this is entirely based on purely speculation, because we have no evidence of any of this, but purely based on speculation. Where are we going in patch 11.0? We're going to this place in the middle of the ocean that somehow sends us into the depths of Azeroth, and we're going to discover that there are actually worlds within worlds, effectively. How are we going to get there? Right? We need to get there somehow. Now, if we think back and we recognize that both the Alliance and the Horde's navies are completely and utterly, I don't want to use a swear word here, but let's just say depleted, right? And imagine I said depleted in a very strong voice. Like, when I said it, you went, "Oh, yes, that's exactly what happened to the Horde and the Alliance navies." And as far as I understand, it's not really been upgraded. It's not really been fixed yet. Now, this is what I would do if I was Blizzard. I would put out a signal. We know that that's happening already because if we watch the cinematic between Anduin and Saurfang and Thrall, they both heard a voice, something making a noise. So what if that noise happens and we're all going, shit, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? This is huge. But we need to get there. We know that there's a voice. We know that there's a noise. We're just not entirely sure where this noise comes from. But we need boats, and we don't have boats. Take the pirate flag. Maybe we employ Booty Bay and the Booty Bay privateers. And now we have ships. Island expeditions? Maybe a version of island expeditions? You know, taking all of the lessons that Blizzard have learned from island expeditions, incorporating that into the game somehow, and making that a farmable thing for the next X number of months. Because what interests me very much about this is Blizzard says that there's going to be a new limited time event. But are we certain that the limited time event is the only new content that's coming? Like, are we absolutely convinced of that? How do you guys feel about that? Because I can absolutely see every single player getting their own ship. You know, maybe with the help of the Booty Bay privateers, you get your own ship, and now you go out and you farm a bunch of islands, sort of like an outdoory Torghast-like thing, where every island has bosses and stuff, and you farm this up, and it's a fun little, maybe some puzzles spread out. Maybe Blizzard can use the work that they've done on delves to kind of start testing out delves on these islands to see what would delves actually look like in the next expansion, like kind of like a delves light version of it. So you have puzzles on some of the islands, you have bosses on some of the islands, you have events on some of the islands. You could take a lot of these events. Remember the world quests all the way back in Legion, where you would have to fly over things and fly through things and, you know, connect the dots of things. You could have all manner of stuff on these islands that players sort of go through. And the reason we're going through these islands is we're trying to figure out, where is this noise coming from? And that then sets you up perfectly when the player eventually, towards the end of the expansion, when we get to pre-patch, the player finally locks in on the real signal. And that then leads into the actual pre-patch. So this would make it one of the longest sort of story-driven intros to a new expansion that we've ever had. Right? Where you are physically playing the intro rather than we're just sort of seeing things play out alongside us. FOMO event, it'll be one-shot pirate theme boss. I highly doubt that. If 10.2.6 is only a limited time event, some kind of pirate dungeon, and that's it, I have a feeling players are going to be super pissed. How would you guys feel about that? If that was what it is. Imagine, for example, there's a dungeon that was taken over by pirates, and that's literally all the new content in the patch. How would that make you guys feel? Valuria, the thing is, right? Say what you will about Blizzard, but it feels... it does... Maybe it is just fucking copium, right? Maybe it is. Maybe you guys are right. Maybe I am just absolutely Mason's cock in the mouth, breathing straight from the fucking source, right? Imagine his balls is where the copium is made. That's where I am right now, right? I'm just goggling that shit down. But it feels to me like Blizzard is a lot more focused on providing fun and almost fun interactions for the player base. It feels like Blizzard is a lot more agile than what they used to be. They're responding to player feedback a lot better than what they used to. Like, a lot better than what they used to. I mean, we're going to talk about the dungeon changes in a second, and I have a video where I first reacted to the dungeon changes. But of course, I would like to hear your thoughts on it, and then you guys can go watch my video afterwards. But just looking at the dungeon changes that's coming in 10.2.6 should tell you that Blizzard is they're at least interested in communicating with the player base and taking the feedback from the player base and taking that to heart. Now, we can of course argue there about whether or not you even need this feedback, whether or not you should perhaps have figured this out on your own much sooner, specifically when we're talking about the normal and heroic versions of the dungeon, where, I mean, anyone that's played World of Warcraft for more than a month knows that normal and heroic becomes irrelevant super quick. It's like, I think on my Warlock, I did normal dungeons for about maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then I think I did 3 heroic dungeons before I went into Mythic 0. I think that was it. Like, I think heroic was actually like 3 or 4 dungeons maybe, and then I was ready for Mythic 0, and I just, so it's basically two versions of the dungeon that's completely dead. And it doesn't even matter. I really don't expect this to be anything bigger than a seasonal event at most. The reason I imagine it has to be, because I imagine Blizzard has to be intelligent enough to know if you're going to play this, we're not giving you any information beforehand. We're not telling you what this event is beforehand. You will know nothing beforehand. And you're going to play that on a shit piece of content? Dude, Blizzard has to be... You have to know that that is going to drive the players up the wall. Like, if you're going to do this, it has to be something huge. It has to. Otherwise, you're walking right into... Although, then again, there's the whole Diablo Immortal fiasco, if you guys remember that. I mean, if I worked for Blizzard and I was just sort of standing there, maybe, I don't know, picking my nose or something, and I heard the developer say, yeah, we're going to announce Diablo Immortal, I'd be like, what's Diablo Immortal? Oh, no, it's a new Diablo mobile game. At BlizzCon? Huh, that's brave of you. Like, what the fuck are you thinking? Well, why would you think this is a good idea? Are you announcing anything else with Diablo? No, just Diablo Immortal. Yeah, I don't think you should do that. That's a silly idea. So maybe it is true. Maybe Blizzard doesn't really think that way. They think that a limited time event, a one-shot dungeon or some shit is good enough. Although, man, people are going to be angry. People are going to be upset. I mean, don't you guys have phones? Yep, I remember that. Dude, I was very triggered. I was very triggered with that one. Way to the argument about the war within being garbage. Actually, this is a good time to ask you guys. How do you guys feel about the war within? Because, I mean, I have these conversations with Twitch chat quite often. And there's a myriad of discussions there because my Twitch chat is filled with people who play World of Warcraft every single day, but also people who never play World of Warcraft or haven't played World of Warcraft for a very long time. So obviously the answers there will be different, obviously. Skeptical, but not entirely negative. Can't wait to move the lore forward. I haven't bought it yet, waiting to see if it's crap. The whole fiasco could have been avoided with one slide with default logo. And now in development text, true. War Within is wait and see if Metzen fix this burning garbage. Next one is a big maybe. The expansion features are kind of disappointing. Gemini Guy, in what way? In what way do you feel the expansion features are disappointing? I have no plans to play, and I'll get the lore stuff from your channel. Elodie, you bastard. You're going to be using me to do all the playing for you? Man, the youth of today are so lazy. No, it's fine. I'll play it for you. It's fine. But already, hope it will be good. It's time for new beginning. Yeah, I picked it up as well. Obviously, like, why wouldn't I buy the new expansion? It's my job to play it, so it's all good. How do I feel about the War Within? Oh, I'm still on the copium train. I'm still sucking on that hopium dick, like 100%. But there is a caveat to that, and I think the caveat here is perhaps more important than almost anything else at this point, and that is when Shadowlands or when BFA was really bad towards the end of it. It had one excuse, and that was that, well, everything up to 8.3 was pretty good, right? It was pretty fine. It's just 8.3 that kind of dropped the ball, so it wasn't too bad. Then Shadowlands came around, and it was an absolute dumpster fire. And of course, the excuse there was the lawsuits, and it was the fact that Alex Afrigiabi was there, and Alex Afrigiabi had, well, this is what the players made up in their own minds, that Alex Afrigiabi had these really shit ideas, and then Denuser had to fix the really shit ideas from Alex Afrigiabi. So that was the excuse then. Then Dragonflight came around, and we were told, before Dragonflight came out, we were told, this is Denuser's baby. Like, Denuser ran this entire thing, top to bottom. Alex Afrigiabi had nothing to do with this. Dragonflight comes out, and I think I speak for a lot of people, not for everyone. I know that there are people that love that version of storytelling. They prefer the more lovey-dovey shit. They like the whole power of friendship, you know, let's all hug it out kind of stuff. But even then, even if I make the exception and I say, all right, I can accept one expansion where there's a lot of lovey-dovey stuff and a lot of power of friendship stuff, it does not excuse some of the really bad writing, especially from the main storylines for Dragonflight. There were some really atrocious writing that happened in the main storylines. The side stories were actually pretty good, for the most part, in Dragonflight, but the main storyline was really not good. Gameplay-wise, I thought Dragonflight was really good. Lily, I absolutely agree with you there. I think gameplay-wise, yeah, it absolutely popped. The problem was the lore that just... Oh... Actually, the problem wasn't the lore. The problem was the storytelling. I don't know how many of you know the difference here, but you obviously have lore, and then you have storytelling. Dragonflight and Shadowlands and even BFA had phenomenal lore, but more often than not, it's the storytelling in World of Warcraft that really lets it down. So how do you, once you have the lore, how do you actually introduce that lore to the players, and how do you actually have that lore develop into an actual physical story? This is where World of Warcraft very often fail miserably, is in the actual telling of the story. And I thought Dragonflight really failed on that one, to the point where whenever I make videos about this, players will disagree with me, but then when they defend their positions, the defense is pretty much always headcanon, right? So they'll give me their headcanon for why I'm wrong about a specific thing that happened. So, for example, when I say the Winter Queen and Alexstrasza, 5 minutes earlier, the Winter Queen tells Alexstrasza straight to her face, I will never follow you. Ever. Alexstrasza says to her, but you want to save Azeroth. Iridikron doesn't give a shit about Azeroth. He'll destroy Azeroth, and the Winter Queen goes, not the Winter Queen. What the fuck am I talking about? What's her name? Not the Winter Queen. Boys. Fuck me, what's her name? Vernoth. Sorry. There we go. For some reason, I clutched out because she looks like the Winter Queen, and I just went, yeah, let's just run with that. Vernoth, excuse me. All right, so Vernoth and Alexstrasza have the whole thing. She says to Alexstrasza, I don't care, this is war. Go suck a dick. Right, effectively. She didn't say that, although that would actually have been cool. That would have been a very good line. Personally, I would have written it that way. Go suck my dick. And then she just leaves as a dragon, right? Something to that effect would have been actually really cool, but never mind that. Then 5 minutes later, she pops back in, and she's like, actually, I changed my mind. I'm back now because it turns out Farak actually does want to destroy the world. And it's like, yeah, but Alexstrasza told you that Iridikron wants to destroy the world, and you said, I don't care. And now Farak wants to destroy the world, and now suddenly you do care? Like, how does this happen? How is this working? Now, whenever I say that, there will be players that defame that by giving me hate cannon. By saying, well, remember, she went back to Farak, and she realized that what Farak wants is the end of all things. Farak is actually going crazy, and he's not just going to destroy the dragons and the titans, he's going to destroy the whole of Azeroth. And to that I say, if you require hate cannon in order to make sense of a story, that is a very badly written story. You should not require hate cannon to make sense of a story. Hate cannon is perfectly fine if we're talking about events that has not yet revealed themselves. So we don't know yet what's going to happen in the War Within. So we all have a bunch of hate cannon about what's going to happen in the War Within. But when you have events where one person says to another person, I will never follow you and I will never be allies with you, and then you have another event where that person that said I will never be an ally is now an ally, that should be explained within the story. I should not be left wondering, why are you now following? Right? And I should not be hate cannoning that shit. So that's sort of where I felt like Dragonflight really dropped the ball. And I get it. There's a lot of people that want to make excuses for World of Warcraft, and so they do come up with this hate cannon, and then they sort of think to themselves, well, if it's that obvious to me, then it should be that obvious to everyone. And then it's like, well, that's not actually what we're arguing about. I'm not actually arguing with you that I can't make sense of it on my own. Of course I can. It's my fucking job. Right? I make speculation videos for a living. I can absolutely come up with a million different reasons for why Vernov did what she did. But I shouldn't have to. Not for that. I want to speculate, but I don't want to speculate trying to explain to people how the bad writing isn't actually bad writing as long as you use your imagination. This isn't the Teletubbies. This is an actual story. So write the fucking thing. Dragonflight failed as well. And of course, Blizzard then announces their answer to fixing Dragonflight is what, chat? How is Blizzard fixing the War Within? What is it that we are now looking forward to in the War Within? Rascal, how you doing, brother? Ortangu, 100%. Mason. This was Blizzard's, in my opinion, ultimate weapon. This is Blizzard's weapon. This is the weapon. When in doubt, smash, in case of emergency, smash glass type of thing. It's Mason. And that scares me, but also excites me. Because if the War Within blows our dicks off, which I'm hoping it does, great. World of Warcraft is on the up and up. We're cruising. But, chat, what happens when World of Warcraft, the War Within, is another dud? What happens if it's another very underwhelming expansion? So not a bad expansion, because I do think if you say Dragonflight is a bad expansion, you are being a little facetious. I genuinely believe that. It's not a bad expansion. Is it the next level expansion? Is it the expansion that World of Warcraft needed after the failures of BFA and Shadowlands? Probably not, but it did a very good job of stemming the bleeding, of giving World of Warcraft another chance at life, right? Bruno, I do not agree with you at all on that one. I do not agree that Dragonflight is worse than Shadowlands. In what way? Like, in what way is Dragonflight worse than Shadowlands? VTX maybe, although they did make Rogue One, and that was actually very good, right? With all the steaming piles of shit that's come out of the Star Wars universe since the first 6 movies, Andor was actually really good. I really enjoyed Andor. And Rogue One, also really, really good. So it is possible to, save something if you really put your mind to it. New players, and new players probably don't even know who the fuck Chris Mason is. Gnostica, the thing with that is, the only way World of Warcraft pulls in new players is if the existing players are having the time of their lives. Because what will happen then is the existing players will make content about that. They'll talk about it to their friends. Word of mouth is like the ultimate way to grow, especially in the world that we find ourselves in nowadays, right? So when you go onto Twitch and you see World of Warcraft near the top of the rankings, everyone playing, having the time of their lives, and not just people hanging out in Mythic Plus dungeons where a new player won't understand at all what is happening there, right? If you're not a WoW player and you're looking at the Mythic Plus streamers, you don't know what the hell they're doing. Half the shit on the screen doesn't make any sense to you. You're not entirely sure what the goal is here. Why are they running such weird tactics for things, right? So if you can log in and you can see people actually having fun in the world, that will immediately drive a massive amount of new players into the game. Because people are having fun. And when other people see people having fun, they want to have fun too. But you tell people not to play retail when someone asks me about it. Elodie, you son of a bitch. Can I go deep? Where's Mythic Plus? Where's Story in Shadowlands? Everyone cared. Was bad. In DF, everyone was there. Was it happening again? I'm not entirely sure if I'm following, Bruno. The Mythic Plus things I can't really talk about because I don't do a lot of Mythic Plus. I would not agree that Dragonflight's story was worse than Shadowlands. I think both of them had pretty terribly written story, but I think both of them had pretty great lore. The lore was really fun. The writing was really bad. But I think both of them I would put them very equal. They're not quite on the Legion level of things, but they're equal. I would put them pretty high up as far as lore goes. Kevin, how you doing, bro? Love you too, man. Imagine you play an expansion that costs already a good amount of money. You play the raid, and the last raid boss won't be available in the game, but only as a novel. Wait, what? Has that happened before? What do you think about that? Elodie, okay, so can World of Warcraft tell super exciting stories as long as we're winning? The answer is yes, but also it's difficult. See, the thing with stories, specifically the thing with telling a good story that people are engaged in, is more often than not, the potential risk of a story is incredibly important at driving engagement. If I know that there is a chance that things can go horribly wrong and I can lose a lot of things, I'm going to automatically be a lot more involved in the story than what I'm going to be if I know exactly how the story is going to end by the time it starts, which is a massive problem right now in World of Warcraft. In pretty much every single expansion, in Dragonflight, for example, there was never any moment where you even for a second thought that Iridikron was going to win. There was never any moment where you even for a second thought that Farak was going to ultimately take it. Sure, we sort of we guessed and we hoped that we may actually lose this one. But fundamentally, it was very clear that we were never going to lose this one. Farak was always going to be defeated, and we were going to be the victorious ones. So what ended up happening at that point is you do lose a lot of the agency of the player, because now the story has no real value. There's no real drawback to the story that keeps the player engaged within the story and makes the player think that there are some real potential downsides and risks to the story. But you also run into some pretty deep problems when you do start to write in the form of, or try to write, a story where the players lose. Because what do the players lose? We can't lose too big. If you lose too big, you run the risk of not being able to recover. So, for example, let's imagine we did lose to Farak. Farak would have successfully destroyed all of Azeroth with the Living Flame. That's not good. You can't recover from that because everyone's dead now. So that clearly isn't a victory that you can give Farak. Which usually means that a lot of writers will go for Pyrrhic victories. So rather than going for a full-scale victory, you maybe end up stopping Farak and he doesn't get to destroy Azeroth, but he does still win. So maybe he gets to kill someone that's super important. And I do think that is something that Blizzard should probably start playing around with a lot more. Broken Shore, although it is actually a very good example of how losses should be handled, but in my opinion, they should not just be handled in that way in single patches, but rather in expansions as well. Because the Broken Shore truly did feel like a loss. Like, was there any one of you that felt happy after the events of the Broken Shore? I don't mean did you enjoy the Broken Shore. I mean, did you feel happy after those events? Was there anyone that watched as Varian Rin got killed and turned into dust by Gul'dan that thought, hey, yeah, fuck, this is great? Or anyone watched as Vol'jin and the leaders of the Horde got absolutely decimated? Did anyone think, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever? Like, no, you felt down. You felt miserable because some of your favorite characters just died, you know, and we just got our shit kicked in by Gul'dan and the Legion. But that also motivated you. Right now, you wanted to play because you realized, sort of in the back of your mind, you realized more people can actually die here. Right? Like, there's a chance that more people could die here. Holy, how you doing, bro? Fuck that, we need to stop killing Horde heroes while ignoring Alliance. We didn't win the war or stop the big bad. We just won 2 battles and called truce on the 3rd. To some extent, that's true. Do you think that it would be a good idea to introduce seasonal world content rotation, a la Mythic Plus dungeon pool, in order to revitalize all the zones and incentivize their updates? Lily, if I'm understanding your assertion correctly, then yes. I have been a massive fan or proponent of the idea we want to see an updated world, right? Everyone wants to see the old world actually make a comeback. Everyone wants to see the old world actually mean something. The problem is that we know that that's going to be a massive undertaking. Just trying to fix the world and make everything new and shiny would probably be a whole expansion on its own, right? With no new content whatsoever. Just, hey guys, we fixed the early leveling experience for you. So I've been having this thought, this idea, and I want to run this by you guys, and you can let me know what you think of this. Okay, so imagine for a quick second that Dragonflight is now the newest, the starting expansion. Imagine Dragonflight is WoW Vanilla. And slowly but surely, every single patch we get taken, or maybe every second patch or every third patch, we get taken back to one of the zones in old World of Warcraft where it's completely updated with maybe you start the update with one of the war fronts. So you do a war front within that zone where, the players can play their war front. The war front is used to update the zone. Then you add story there, and then that zone becomes a new max level zone. It's no longer a leveling zone, it's now a max level zone. Slowly but surely, you work your way through all of the old zones in World of Warcraft, upgrading them to be eternal max level zones. So zones the players can go in and do max level activities like world bosses and dungeons and raids and whatever the fuck you want to think of. Just, it's max level stuff, and it levels up alongside the players. So whenever a next expansion comes out, all of the old world zones literally level up alongside you with new pets, new mounts just sprinkled in everywhere, whatever, right? Doesn't it matter. You can talk about that at some point. Like what rewards will be in there. Maybe not rewards in every single zone, but every other patch, there's maybe some reason to go back to one of the newer updated zones. In that way, yes, you are technically killing off the old lore of World of Warcraft. Because those new zones will now tell maybe something like their own stories. So you craft the stories in those zones to be their own stories, to really tell a little bit of lore about the zone and about the creatures within the zone, but not really the old lore of World of Warcraft. And you lock the old lore of World of Warcraft behind Chromie. So if a player wants to experience the old lore prior or pre-Dragonflight, they have to talk to Chromie, and Chromie can send them back in time to play through the old lore. But the new zones, or the new old zones, it's a difficult one to explain. But the new old zones are now sort of like their own capsules. How would you guys feel about that? If anything, I said just now made sense, of course. Evergreen zones? Yeah, literally turning them into evergreen, right? So these are always online, always available, with some interesting stuff that's in there. I don't think it's important to preserve the old. Lily, I think the only reason I would want to preserve the old, or the old lore is, I think from a player perspective and from a historical perspective, there is a reason to preserve it within the game. Now, in a perfect world, the way that I would want to do it is when you talk to Chromie, you don't just get sent back to the old world. You actually go back to WoW Classic. So your player, everything gets to 0, right? You start at level 0 and you have to level through WoW Classic. And the game remembers. So you can literally leave Chromie time, go do things in the raids and in the dungeons and stuff. But then when you talk to Chromie again, she sends you back to the old world, and you're again playing through WoW Classic. As it was, right? As it was meant to be, with all the classes and all the spells and stuff. So it's really its own experience. And the same for TBC, the same for Wrath. So every single one of these expansions have their classic old version for players that want to see the old version of the game. And you still have the retail experience there for players that want to play retail. It's there, but it's all part of one game. Now, I'm not suggesting remove Season of Discovery or even remove the classic servers. I think those should stay. I think this should be far more of a single player experience almost. So it is meant for you to go back and go experience the old world because you want to see the lore or you want to see what it used to be like. If you want to get the full experience, you have to go back and actually play the classic servers. So that means logging out of retail and logging into one of the classic servers. The only reason I say this is if you're a new player and you're playing World of Warcraft for the first time, you might not even know, right, that in our world where we've now completely changed the way World of Warcraft operates and all of the zones have been updated, you might not even know that there is such a thing as classic servers, right? So you're never even going to try to play the classic servers. So it's I think it should be in the game to some extent. BRX, but no one is going to do what? Ferraris, how you doing, bro? Just adding world quests and their current tier rewards would fix that. Holy, remember, if I'm going in and I'm fixing the old zones, I can play around with the size as much as I want, right? I don't have to keep those zones as large as they are. Because remember, I am updating all of those zones and changing them fundamentally from the ground up, right? To now be max level zones. So now I can work around dragon riding or dynamic flying that's in the game. I can update these zones to be more friendly towards dragon riding or dynamic flying. So I can play around with the old zones. And the reason I'm doing it bit by bit, slowly, but slowly, is because it's such a lot of work. It's so much work that you wouldn't be able to do all of it at once. So you're sort of updating and upgrading the game, but slowly over the course of many, many years. So you give yourself 5 years to do this, and you work on this for the next 5 years, making sure that you can eventually have a brand new, shiny world with a shit ton of end-game content. Because every single one of those zones is a potential place for old world content to happen, or end-game content to happen. Beer expert, but no one said anyone should. It's preserved there for those that do it. And Beer, I'll have you know, I do play through the old expansions quite often, actually. Because I want the lore. Like, every once in a while, I'll be like, shit, I wonder what happened there. I'll quickly go play it. So, no, there are people that will still do it. It's just completely optional. So it doesn't have to be done by people that don't want to do it. Beer expert, but why does that matter? Okay, I have a genuine question. I don't understand why the WoW community is one of the few communities out there that will not accept anything in their game unless it applies to the majority of players. Like, either 70% of the players want this or get fucked. Like, I don't care about you, get fucked. That's one of WoW's biggest problems, because it ends up with most of the player base having very little to do because the game is constantly trying to adhere to everyone. Whereas it's perfectly fine to have systems that only appeal to about 4 or 5% of the player base. And if you have enough of those systems that only appeal to 4 or 5% of the player base, guess what? 100% of the player base have shit that they like to do. It's the same argument with housing. Oh yeah, I don't want to do housing. Blizzard shouldn't waste time on housing. It doesn't matter. If there's just 10% of players that want to do housing, housing will be something for 10% of the player base to do. And that means that it's important. It should be there. Even though I'm a player that will not engage in housing, I fundamentally support housing being in World of Warcraft. Even if most players don't want it, it doesn't matter. Evans, that's another thing. WoW is one of the few expansions that continuously throws away very hard worked for content. Content that took many, many hours to develop is just thrown away at the end of every single expansion. I think there's always lessons that can be learned from other games. But I also think it's important that we don't just look at other games and be like, well, since the other games do it, WoW should be doing it too, right? That's also not necessarily a healthy way of looking at it. Instead, we should be focused on what works for WoW. And we know that the old zones work for WoW. How do we know this? Because there's a shit ton of players that like going back to the old world and farming mounts and farming dungeons. Well, give them an old world to actually go do that in. That's fun and interactive rather than just the same grind over and over again, hoping that they can, fill up a bar or some shit. The thing is, the way you should look at content creation is little makes lots. And that actually sounds much better in Afrikaans. In Afrikaans, the saying is "Bikkie bikkie maak baie," which literally means little makes lots, right? So it seems like let me explain it. Let me get out my trusty paint. I like using paint to explain things because it makes more sense. All right, so if we were to use, if we're looking at it like this, right? So when you're designing an expansion, you can do the expansion like this, right? So you have, say, 1 year, another 1 year, right? So you have 4 main pillars of the expansion. Say this one is, let's say this is the open world, right? And that includes questing and everything to do with the open world. So everything to do with the zones. Then you have dungeons, right? You have raids, and you have PvP, right? So this is what your game is effectively based on, right? This is what your game is effectively built on. Let me just do this. Yeah, that's a bit better. Okay, this is effectively what your game is built on. Now, the problem that you run into with this specific model is that you have to design an absolute boatload of content in order to make sure that this is going to keep players busy for a full 2 years. Right, so there has to be a lot of content inside these to make sure, because players have only these 4 boxes to look at. There's nothing else. It's one of these 4 boxes. Choose a box and play within it. And you need a lot of content in order to make that work. The problem in World of Warcraft is at the end of every expansion, what happens? Each of these boxes are replaced, and then we make brand new boxes. But now, if you want it to be... I include leveling paints in the open world box because most of the time, the leveling experience is built around the open world experience, and they usually form into each other. So I make that all part of the same box. Because leveling is... You can't have leveling without an open world. Where are players leveling? Unless, of course, you just want them to spam dungeons while they're leveling. But now, if you were to say, make a bunch of smaller pieces of content. So rather than having one big piece of content, instead you have many small pieces of content, right? And most of these pieces, some of them overlap, some of them don't overlap at all, some of them stand completely to the side, but it's all evergreen, right? So, or at least most of them is completely evergreen. So you have all of these small little boxes here with things that's designed. Say, for example, this is some of the evergreen content. So you have a Torghast in here, and you have a Mage Tower in here that's redesigned in order to last for a really long time. And you maybe have an Isle of Thunder event or a Timeless Isle type of place that is designed for you to basically always be able to go in there and just have fun and enjoy it. You start at level 0 and you have to go through this whole dungeon or this whole zone, and you just get super overpowered, kind of like what Final Fantasy have. They have there's 2 zones of Final Fantasy where you can do shit like that. And maybe you have some kind of goblin versus gnome racetrack somewhere in the game, and you can go racing with your goblin racer or your gnome racer. And maybe you have dragon riding, dynamic flying races that's all over the map. So you have all of these small little evergreen stuff. And then on top of that, you still have the open world. You still have your PvP. You still have your PvE. And you still have your dungeon content, right? You still have, so you have your open world, your PvP, your raids, and your dungeons. They're all still there, right? So the big boxes are still there, but they're now they're surrounded by all of these other little boxes. That's not a word, I think. But anyways, you get what I'm saying. They're surrounded by all of this. So what this now means is you don't have to put as much effort into consistently overcompensating. You don't need as many dungeons. You don't need as many bosses in your raids. You don't need as many this, as many that. Because there's so much other shit that players can already do, that players will find something to do. There will be something for every player to do in the game because you've designed it as such. You've designed it so that even raiders have certain, like, evergreen pieces of content that they love doing because it's super hard. So, for example, say Torghast is the more casual, ever-climber, roguelike experience. Mage Tower is the hardcore for the hardcore fan of roguelike experience. So hardcore raiders love going into Mage Tower because it's super hard. And more casual players like Torghast because it's a lot more forgiving and you have a lot more powers and shit of that nature. So you can design something for everyone, which gives you a lot more freedom in the design of the main pillars of your game. So you still have the main pillars that's keeping everything up, but all of the smaller things on top help support these main pillars so that even when you make a mistake. So, for example, there's a lot of people that's currently complaining that the dungeon rotation for 10.2.6 is a little bit boring because the dungeon rotation are all of the new expansion dungeons. Okay? Well, when you have a shit ton of evergreen content around those dungeons that players can involve themselves with, even when you have a specific patch that has slightly more boring dungeons, for example, it doesn't matter, right? Because, yes, okay, the dungeons are a little bit more boring, but I still have all of this other stuff that I can do. Right now, World of Warcraft's biggest problem is that if something happens and the dungeons feel shit, well, now I have nothing to do. If you're a dungeon player in World of Warcraft and the dungeons feel a little off, or maybe your class is a little bit broken, just remember, you don't know what's happening. Every player is going to have a very different experience. So maybe you're playing Disc Priest and you love your Disc Priest, but Disc Priest is completely busted. No one wants to play with you. So you can't really do dungeons. Right now in World of Warcraft, you can do nothing. What do you do when your class is broken in such a way that no one wants to play with you in World of Warcraft? You either quit or you roll another class. But if you have a shit ton of evergreen content to play with and to play around with, well, maybe this season I just don't do as many dungeons. And instead I focus on other things, right? I build my house, or I go to Torghast, or whatever the case may be. That's why evergreen content is so critical to the success of an MMO. Because without it, you're putting a lot of pressure on the main pillars of the game. And if one of those main pillars fail, it's a train smash. And for the last few years, one that has consistently failed is this one. PvP is consistently in the shitter. And why are PvPers complaining? Well, because they don't have anything else to do. So when PvP sucks, well, their game is sort of destroyed, right? Their game is a little ruined. So I do think that this is important and it should be built upon. And Blizzard should dive into it. Now, Blizzard is already with the introduction of delves, but of course, there can always be done more. And there's already, like, the bare bones blueprints are already there for even more, right? Use Mythic Plus to gear. Why shouldn't PvP be an alternative way to gear? Holy, now we're getting into a very difficult conversation because, I mean, this is literally a conversation that is as old as WoW. I remember having the conversation about PvP versus PvE gear. I think all the way back in Wrath, we were talking about this. It's always been a problem in World of Warcraft, and the problem is it's very hard to fix because Blizzard tried, right, to remove the gearing from to remove gear from PvP, that felt shit as balls, right? Really didn't feel good. Blizzard tried to make PvP gear as powerful as PvE gear. That didn't feel great either. So PvP is one of the worst things ever. I genuinely think if you were to ask the WoW devs, if they could with no downsides, they'd probably remove PvP from the game. Because I do think PvP gives them more sleepless nights than literally any other piece of content in WoW. Well, argument to my point, Chill. What's going on? Why are you guys arguing? Why aren't you streaming there at the same time? Madrat, because this is a very specific podcast for the main channel, right? So I'm streaming on the main channel. This is a podcast for the main channel. So it would feel weird if I'm also streaming on Twitch at the same time. Don't worry, we'll be back on Twitch on Monday, right? I didn't get banned on Twitch. At least I don't think I have. Fuck. I should probably check that. I don't think I've been banned. I don't think I did anything to be banned. Let me just make sure of that. You never know, right? Maybe Twitch decided, nope, fuck this guy. We don't want to hear anything about it. No, I'm still good here. Yeah, we'll be back on Monday. I would say tomorrow, but that's not happening. Tomorrow is Ali C, bro. Tomorrow I'm watching Fnatic. I'm watching G2. I can't be streaming. All right, can I just ask, why is there a lot of arguments right now? Oh, Madrid, I'm well aware. I mean, I utilize Twitch multi-streaming literally every single day. I stream over on the second YouTube channel as well as on Twitch, right? And on Twitter and on Kick, right? So I stream to 4 different places at the same time. But this is very specifically just for main channel. Because the problem is when we're hanging over on Twitch, when we're hanging out there, we're very rarely talking about WoW. And what I've heard from people DMing me is they almost feel like they're interfering with chat over on Twitch when they ask questions about WoW. Because, well, our Twitch streams are very rarely about WoW. So it sort of just, I like having something here for the main channel as well, where people feel free to just talk about WoW and have those conversations as well, since we can't really do it over on Twitch. Pod, how you doing, brother? Hope all is well. Are you at your new standing desk? Thought you were standing for a moment. Good on you. They supposed to be good. Yes, I have the new standing desk. This thing was a bitch to put together, but it's working and I love it. I tend to stand quite a lot now. Out of like a 7-8 hour stream, I probably do a good 5 hours standing. I'm a huge fan of the standing desk. Oh, damn. Thank you. Oh, shit. Thank you so much, Murdat, for joining the DJ Nation. Really appreciate you, fam. Thank you. Thank you so much. WoW PvP is extremely niche for those who are drawn towards that type of gameplay. If you aren't in the WoW PvP ecosystem, never step in, because it's just such a steep learning curve that it's ruthless. Overall, you'll be surprised how many people actually love that, right? I know there's my brothers, for example. They don't play WoW often, but when they do play WoW, it's literally just for PvP. Like, they couldn't give 2 shits about anything else in WoW. But the last time they played WoW was Shadowlands. And then I remember my brother coming to me and he was like, okay, Stefan, I need a piece of gear. I'm like, okay, what piece of gear do you need? Because he was looking at a guide. Because he couldn't understand why he's not doing any fucking damage. And so he's looking at this guide, and the guide says he needs a piece of gear. And I'm like, yeah, you have to do Torghast. And he's like, where's that? And I'm like, explain to him it's in the Maw. He has to go there and he'll do Torghast. He does 1 Torghast, literally 1 run of Torghast. And he comes out and he said, yeah, I just uninstalled WoW. I'm like, why? He said, fuck that. I want to do PvP, and instead I have to run this every week? No shot. I don't give a shit about this. So him and my little brother just both quit. They were just like, nope, don't give a shit about this. I really don't want to play like this. Because they just want to PvP. They just want to kill people. They don't give a shit about anything else. And then they find out they can't even get their Legos from PvP. They have to get it from Torghast. And they were just like, there's no shot that I'm doing that. Because he asked me, like, do I only have to do it once? Because, okay, so actually, I remember now. Full story was, he came out and he said, okay, I've done it now. Can I buy the piece? I was like, no. You have to do this a couple more times, and then you can buy the first version of the piece. And you have to keep doing it. He was like, wait, I have to do this every week? I'm like, yeah. He's like, no, fuck that. And then he uninstalled the game. And he was done. He never logged into WoW again. So that was the end of it for him. Auburn, how you doing, brother? Thank you so much. 14 months part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you. Far too kind, sir. If PvP was a standalone game, you can't do that either. Because, again, PvP is part of WoW. WoW is part of PvP. If you made PvP a standalone game, that would really remove a lot. Although, I can see PvPers probably not even giving a shit about that. Like, the only people that might complain about that would be the open world PvPers, the people that like to go into the open world. BTX, are we certain that it is completely incompatible with WoW? Are we absolutely convinced that there is no way to make PvP fit into WoW? Or maybe make WoW fit into PvP? Riverall, I do think that is definitely the answer, is to make PvP as independent as humanly possible. But then, you know, if you go too far, it can start to feel like you're running parallel games to one another. And at that point, I would actually argue, why are you even designing classes to operate similarly than, you know, from PvP to PvE? So if we are going to go with the completely parallel games, so PvP and PvE, they're in the same game, so you have to log into WoW, but from there, they basically have nothing to do with each other. Why not just have the design be completely different as well? So make spells operate completely differently based on PvE or PvP? Could you do that? Or do you guys think there would be some kind of, like, you would run into some kind of problem there? But which group you want to foster? Wait, okay, so how would you, VTX, how would you incorporate PvP into World of Warcraft? Elodie, I agree with you, right? I agree with you. It works for Final Fantasy XIV. Why wouldn't it work for WoW? The only thing I can tell you that I would argue probably makes a massive change here, Final Fantasy XIV PvP, even for someone like me that doesn't PvP, dude, that shit is... That's like the kiddie version of PvP. Like, I don't think you can compare WoW PvP to Final Fantasy XIV PvP. Like, Final Fantasy XIV PvP is really for disabled kids. It's where... It's like the Paralympics. WoW's is the actual Olympics. So, I don't think you can compare the two. It worked for Final Fantasy because most Final Fantasy players don't take PvP very seriously. Whereas WoW, there are people who PvP's that's their life. That's literally why they play WoW, is for PvP. I don't know of many people in Final Fantasy XIV that play PvP for, or play Final Fantasy XIV for PvP. Pod, yes, I am excited for it, definitely. We discussed it at the beginning of the stream, Pod, but yes, I'm super hyped for it. but also cautiously optimistic. I'm more excited actually for how it's going to play out. I'm less excited for what it is, because it is a normal patch. So I'm expecting it to be normal patch, but I'm more excited for how it's going to play out. Like I'm sort of sitting on the sidelines looking at it and going, I wonder if players are going to be super happy or if players are going to be super upset. Now, the downside as well as the upside is I live in South Africa, so I play on the European servers. Because I play on the European servers, I'm not going to be able to play it on day one, which is actually something that really pisses me off. Blizzard goes through all this hoopla of not allowing anyone to see the actual new content. But then all European players are going to see the new content before they're able to play the new content. So basically, for all of Europe, this entire exercise of not making it available on the PTR is a complete waste of time. Abaddon, not from what I've heard. So Mr. GM actually on Twitter had Holly replied to him, and Mr. GM was very upset that this wasn't going to be a global launch, and Holly explained that they were talking about it internally, but ultimately decided against a global launch. But she never actually goes into detail as to why they decided internally not to do a global launch. Let me see if I can find it for you guys. Let me see if I can find it. Hold up. Yeah, here we go. So here's the tweet. Not having a global release date for 10.26 doesn't feel good. And Holly Longdale replies, we really wanted to. We discussed it a lot. This is like wearing 2 eye patches on a unicycle in rush hour. Exciting and unpredictable. We will all be learning together on this one. Which is fine. You know, I have no problem with her answer. I just feel like you've gone through all the trouble to try the first thing that you've ever tried, right? You've never tried this before. But you are sort of ruining it for what I would guess is your biggest player base. Because your biggest player base, just by pure numbers, I'm assuming that there are more players in Europe than what there are in America, they're getting completely spoiled. So as far as we're concerned in Europe, you may as well have put this on the PTR. Because it makes no difference to us. We're going to see the fuckheads in NA play the expansion already. So you're going to see everything that there is in the patch. That feels shit. Like, that really doesn't feel fun. However, I don't want premium service. What I want is the same, right? That's literally all I care about is I want global launches. Like, make it launch for everyone at the same time. Yeah, the thing is, I have never understood the argument about why we can't have global launches. Like, could someone explain that to me like I'm fucking 5? Anyone here? Why can't patches, if games can launch globally, why can't patches? What exactly is so broken about the patch system? Or how would a global launch date for a patch break the game when it doesn't break the game for game launches? Overall, but if there's an implementation issue, would that not then also be a problem for the launch of the game? Is 1 fire instead of 100? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I even think that's a, like, I don't know if that, because what happens more often than not is sometimes Europe will have problems that NA won't have, and NA will have problems that Europe won't deal with. So even there, although that's become much rarer nowadays, I guess there's been more standardization in their system infrastructures. Can't be traffic, because you're still connecting to the exact same servers, right? Marcenta, how you doing? Or like all Europeans are still connecting to the European server, and all Americans are still connecting to the American server. So it's definitely not a traffic thing. Like I've heard the base comeback I've heard of this or for this is the race to world first. But I am convinced of the fact that you could probably get a time that works for both NA and EU to launch the world first. Because one of the biggest complaints from EU raiders is the fact that NA consistently gets 1 day head start. And so EU is pretty much always working from behind. All right, I think it's an NA team that won the last one, right? And it does sort of make sense that EU will win more than NA, just to be fair. There's more players. So you have, just by virtue of statistics, you have more talent. So you can, it's much easier to get 20 of the best of the best of the best players in one team in Europe than what it would be in NA, because you just have fewer players to choose from. And since, there isn't just one guild, a lot of your best players may actually be spread amongst, say, 6 or 7 guilds, and there isn't necessarily enough players to really fill 6 or 7 guilds with the best players that there are. It's sort of like you see the exact same thing happening in League of Legends. So in League of Legends, in general, I know a lot of people are going to go, but didn't we beat you in Worlds? But in general, EU is a lot stronger than NA. And it's again because, well, the EU server is about double the size of the NA server in League of Legends. So you just, by virtue of numbers, have more talent in the one region than you have in the other. Like counter-argument, we here in Europe have a couple dozen languages with many players not speaking English at all or well. They usually are stronger, but also more segregated. I mean, I would argue that hasn't been... While I agree with you, language was a problem, I think, very early on. I don't know if language is as big of a problem anymore. Like nowadays, whenever you watch League of Legends, most of those players can speak English to at least a decent enough extent. And in World of Warcraft, there's a lot less need for players to be speaking. The only thing that players really need to think about, like, as long as you can sort of understand what your raid leader is saying, that's really all you need. And it's not like League of Legends where all 5 players have to be communicating. You just need at least one player to be able to fucking speak, right? In the MDI where people said healer? What's that? At the highest end, yes. My point is that it's a little bit harder for players to break that barrier because they can't integrate. Once you pass it, it's fine. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've ever encountered a player on the EU, although it's probably not fair because a lot of the players that can't speak English will be on one of their own realms or would join their own guilds, obviously. But I don't think on Kazakh, for example, which was, I don't know if it's still the largest horde realm, but it was the largest horde realm. I don't think I've ever encountered an EU player that couldn't speak English. Like, sometimes they speak shit English, that's true, but they speak it. They can say at least some things, right? I would say over 90% pro players can understand English in EU. Language is not a problem. Yeah, but I do get what VTX is trying to say. He's trying to speak about the potential player pool. So even though Europe is much larger, you may still have like 30 or 40% of the player base that could potentially be good enough to play in one of the max guilds can't speak English, so therefore they can't be in that guild. But even then, it would depend on the size, and I do think Europe is far larger than NA. Speaking another language is better than me. I only speak American. Most Americans only speak American. It's all good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have another question for you. Now, this video is going to go live after this stream. So I'm not gonna go through all of the details. I'm assuming most of you already know the details, but I want to hear your thoughts on it anyways. The new dungeon changes. How do you guys feel about that? What are your thoughts about the new dungeon changes? Everyone, you thought what was already live? It's smart. The new dungeon changes are great. Be ready for Super Accolon. Did you again do the whole fucking Ang thing, bro? Overall positive, but I'm more curious to see how this lands next expansion when people need to learn the dungeons from scratch. I don't know what they are. Christopher Van Sickle. So, as I said, I'm not going to go through all of the changes here because I do have a video where I go through everything and also my first reactions to it and my first thoughts on it. And it'll go live like literally as I end this stream. I'll make that live. Made you enter a tube like Super Mario? Fuck me. Okay. Holly, I'm looking forward to seeing that. This is one of the few videos where I will be watching it alongside everyone else. That's going to be interesting. My personal thoughts on it, I think this is a change that I've wanted for a super long time. It's a change that I have personally highlighted should have been in the game. I think I even made a video where I said exactly this. And it's one of those things where I genuinely believe that there are too many difficulty settings in World of Warcraft. And this isn't even a conversation about difficulty cadences or anything like that. I just think there's too many difficulties in World of Warcraft, which makes it feel overly convoluted. And I like the fact that what this is doing is it's squishing those difficulties into a much more tight-knit unit, right? With us at the end of the stream and react live to your video. Holy, because if I do that, none of the people that's watching the stream counts as viewers on the video. Right? So that's the problem. You can't do a watch party on your own video. You'll literally kill it. In the fucking in the algorithm. I love the follower dungeons. Oh yeah, that's a different change, but ultimately still a good change and definitely a change that I agree with. Because I mean, the follower dungeons I think is it has to be there, right? It had to be there years ago at this point already. It's actually, it's almost criminal that it took this long to get follower dungeons into the game. And I obviously want to see the system being built out even more, because I do think there is a world where you could even design something like follower raids, which means you can remove LFR, since most people do LFR only to see the raid and see the story. Once you can do something like a follower raid, do you still need LFR? Then you can remove LFR and just make that a follower raid and then have like the actual raid be normal. So that immediately removes one of the difficulty settings for LFR anyways. And since LFR tends to be a super annoying experience for most players anyways, I think a lot of people would just automatically appreciate it if they didn't have to worry so much about, doing LFR. I don't know if I would remove gear entirely from LFR, but I would probably keep it the same way that it is now. So even if it is just a follower raid, I mean, LFR gear is so entry level. Does it really even matter? Like, maybe the one thing that you can remove from LFR would be tier sets. But then again, tier sets is... like, for at least from what I've heard from people, tier sets tend to be really boring anyways these days. So that's exactly what needs to happen to LFR. You're still limited by lockouts. With Evans, story focus raid. So wait, would you guys prefer no gear in follower LFR or yes gear in follower LFR? Holy, personally, I like the fact that LFR is as toxic as it is. Dude, I have had some of the funniest moments of my life in LFR. I have witnessed guys like almost go as salty as when I'm doing, for example, ARAM. Now, in ARAM, of course, I'm consistently told, I hope you get AIDS, and I'm going to fuck your mum, and, you know, I'm going to fuck your dad, and all sorts of orifices and whatnot. So ARAM is like next level salt, but I will say LFR is like at least entry level salt mines, and I love that. Dude, I have seen people rage their fucking asses off, and I love that. I don't know why we are banning people from being toxic in the game, because I think toxic people are like some of the funniest people in game. Now, you have to think about how angry must someone be to sit there and write mean shit in chat. Like, you're so angry. I get screaming, right? If you're angry, maybe you go, fuck, or whatever, right? If that's the thing that you do. But to be so angry that you're angrily typing something to someone, like, that is a kind of anger I have never experienced in my life. I've never been that angry that I angrily go, oh, fuck you, you bastard. I've never been that angry, so I always laugh when I see that shit. True. I put transmog in it to maybe a mount. Transmogs could work, since a lot of people that care about stories would also love something like cute transmogs or some shit like that. Yeah, that could work, actually. Good, you can type. When you pick a class with auto-attack talents and just auto-attack. Okay, so if we are going to introduce follower raids, and it's just a story raid, should it at least present some level of difficulty, like a personal type of difficulty, or should it be an absolute walk in the park? I especially think you can actually remove LFR gear from the LFR follower raid with the new dungeon system. Because the new dungeon system is a lot more streamlined, do players really still need LFR to gear? Since you should be able to gear yourself for normal just through the dungeon system, no? You see, the thing is, my initial thought is to instantly go, well, they should give us the ability to do normal, heroic, and mythic follower raids. But then you're just reintroducing a bunch of difficulty levels to the game. And we're already trying to cut back on the number of difficulty levels that we have in the game. We want the game to be a lot less convoluted. And now we've literally just invented 3 new. We've removed 1 difficulty setting and we've replaced it with 3 new ones. So we're not actually doing the very thing that we're trying to do, which is to cut back on convoluted systems within World of Warcraft. So at best, I can say, if you were to do follower raids, maybe you can choose the type of followers you have, and that can make things a little bit harder, right? Or maybe there's like a hard mode button on every single one of the bosses, and that makes the fight a little bit harder, but it's still pretty piss. It's just a little bit harder if that's something you're looking for. It's the most exciting thing to happen for me and WoW for many years. AB, I think you're not alone on that. I think for a lot of people, like, I think it's very easy in World of Warcraft to get caught in your own little bubble. You know, and people are so prone to being caught in their own little bubbles that the biggest problem with specifically in WoW, because most players only do the things that they like, it's very easy for you to think that everyone likes the things that you like because everyone you talk to like the things that you like, and you only like the things that you like. But then as a content creator, I often get the opportunity to speak to a lot of people about a lot of different things. And then you realize, actually, there are things in World of Warcraft that some people enjoy that I've never even thought I want to do. Like, there are legit things in World of Warcraft that I have never even thought I've never even thought about it. Like, no matter how bored I am, I would rather a cow finger fuck me than go do this thing. And then there's players that's like, yeah, I love doing that. That's like one of my favorite things to do. It's like, really? Shit. All right. I genuinely thought Blizzard could remove this thing from the game, but okay, you know, if that's your thing, I guess. RP servers are super interesting. I never do it, but I'm happy people do it. Dude, all I want for RP servers, because I'm also not an RPer, I've never RP'd. The only time I've ever been on an RP server was with my ex-girlfriend, because she wanted to go check it out. And it took me all but 5 minutes. Like, the longest I was in the server was running to Goldshire. And then I walked into Goldshire. Some dude typed some bullshit to me. And I was like, yeah, I'm out. I'm not doing this. And she was like, no, come on, it's fun. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. And I just logged out and I logged back into Kazakh. And I think I leveled my rogue or some shit. Because that was enough for me. I was like, yep, never mind. This place weird. So I don't do RP, but I do want to see more tools for RP players. I do think currently the WoW RP crowd may actually just be one of the most imaginative people on the earth, because most of the stuff that they have to imagine, because Blizzard doesn't actually make a lot of stuff for them. Open the stream to I'd rather get finger fucked by a cow than go do that. Jakes, how you doing? Goldshire goes hard in RP servers? True. I love MMO role playing? Fuck no. I remember what the guy actually typed to me, and he was like, hello, good sir. How are you? Something to that effect, like very official. And I was just like, no. Fuck no. I'm not doing this because you have to type in character. And I was like, dude, I don't even know what my character is. What are you talking about? This isn't fun. So I left. I didn't even say anything to the dude that typed to me. I literally just said to my girlfriend, I'm out of here. And then I logged off. It was much more enjoyable when I just watched others run their crazy scenarios or stories, like watching a TV show. Mangoku, you know there's actual TV shows you can watch, right? I broke character Abaddon, yes. It was okay for like 2 minutes. Only thing I love about RP servers is no spam and trade chat. Dude, we logged into WoW the other day because I was showing people time played. And trade chat is genuinely just, it may as well not exist. Like, you could literally just remove trade chat from your window and you would be missing nothing. You can't read shit in trade chat, and everything that's happening in trade chat is completely and utterly unnecessary. Like, there's just nothing there. watching World First and they're in full roleplay. Dude, that would be super annoying though, because that goes on for weeks. How annoying would they be role playing while they're doing World First? But you see, Edric, that's what I want for the WoW RP community. I want Blizzard to make more tools for the RP community to have fun with. Because I think that's important. I think RP is a very important portion of a game. Like, if you go into Final Fantasy XIV, dude, it is nuts. The housing system, the tools that they have for RP, dude, those people go absolutely bonkers for shit. Planning weddings, having nightclubs, having fucking brothels. Like, they really go balls to the wall with their RP and their housing system. And Final Fantasy creates all of the tools for them to actually enjoy the game from that scenario. Nightclubs go hard. True, VTX. RPers are the lifeblood of a game during content droughts. I wouldn't say RPers are the lifeblood of the game. That's not true, because they very rarely interact with the other players in the game. But I will say they have the best time during content droughts because, well, you know, there is no such thing as a content drought for them. They always make their own content. Wasn't there... Are there no quests in World of Warcraft that sort of try to explain to you the different emotes? Final Fantasy weddings are awesome. I loved it. I'm not an RP person. I was at a wedding when we were streaming Final Fantasy XIV, and it was equal parts bonkers, but also fucking amazing. Dominus, how you doing, brother? Good start with importing TRP 3 into WoW's interface. Then players won't have to install an add-on to write their backstory, character details, etc. Dominoes, I would say yes, that's probably immediately a thing that WoW could do. It should be easy enough to do since the add-on already exists. You literally just have to buy the code off of, if you want to be nice, buy the code of the original creator, or just do it, right? But I would say the biggest thing WoW needs for its RP community is housing. Because housing is the thing that unlocks almost all of the other RP tools. Housing system would go crazy for RPers. I wouldn't even say you need a good housing system right off the bat. You can do garrisons and then do small patch updates every single patch where you add more and more customization to the garrison system until the garrison system becomes a full-fledged housing system. So if you just initially gave players the option to turn their garrisons, like customize their garrisons into at least any one of the five major, or of any one of the five of the major races, I think that would already go hard because that would immediately give RP players a place to go to and sort of make their own. And then from there, just keep adding every patch more and more customization options, more and more ways to move buildings around, add a second floor maybe to your garrison building, maybe eventually start adding stuff in there. So every patch you give people more options of customization until you finally have what we could refer to as a full-fledged housing system. So you can, again, break it down, as I said before, little makes lots. I hope restoring all of the capitals leads to player housing. I had a couple of friends who had an in-game wedding in WoW, had another friend in the guild who was a priest as the officiant. Nice, TJ. Do we know whether all of the capitals are being restored? Like, is that a confirmed thing that's happening? Rev, so there are very, very, very few things that pisses me off quite as much as when Ian said player housing would cost a raid tier. Like, bro, I have no words for how upset I was when I heard him say that, because it immediately confirmed to me one of my greatest fears when it comes to World of Warcraft, because it confirmed that Blizzard doesn't view their game as an ongoing game that they have a decade to do things in. Blizzard views their game in 2-year increments. And if something cannot be done in 2 years, it just can't be done. Sorry, guys, we can't do a housing system in 2 years, so therefore you will never have a housing system. And it's like, yeah, but you could do a housing system in 5 years. If you did it little by little by little, in 5 years, you have a full-fledged housing system. Right? It's the same thing with why they can't update all the graphics in the game. We would love to update all the graphics in the game, but it would take too long, right? We would have to offer up all of the raid tiers, and it's like, yeah, but that's because you're only thinking in 2-year increments. You are the developers of an MMO. By its very nature, you have more than 2 years to do things in. If you start now, you will be finished in 5 or 6 years. But because you don't start now, you're never going to be finished. The first time Ian said that they would love to do housing, but it would cost the raid tier, if they started doing housing then, little by little, we would already have housing in World of Warcraft. If the first time, and I believe the first time that Ian said that they would love, actually the first time Blizzard said that they would love to update the world, it was Tom Chilton, and I believe it was just before the World of Draenor, it was the BlizzCon just before World of Draenor, where Tom Chilton was asked this on stage, and he said, if I could wave a wand and we could update the whole game to look brand new fresh, we would do it, but sadly, that's not how it works. If they started updating zones all the way back then, all of the zones would now have been updated in World of Warcraft. They would have been done. Raven, what do you actually do with a housing system? For some players, like myself, nothing. Even in Final Fantasy XIV, I don't have a house. The only games I have a house in are survival games because, well, the fuck, right? You have to have it in order to play the game. But I'm not a huge housing player, right? But there are players for whom it is everything. There are players who play Final Fantasy just because of the housing system, because it's ultimately, it is an expression. It's a tool for self-expression, and since RPGs is all about self-expression, housing grants you another way to express yourself. It's sort of like the argument of why is transmog important? If you don't think housing is important, then transmog isn't important either. Because transmog literally is also just a tool for self-expression. It has no other real value in the game outside of being able to express who you want to be in World of Warcraft. And that's exactly where housing falls into as well. It's a way to express yourself and make the game your own in whichever way you feel, right? Clabby, how you doing, bro? I'm still torn on player housing. The potential sounds cool, but killing player hubs and cities even further is not worth it to me. An empty city and an MMO is a massive demotivation for me. So, Clabby, the thing is, that's what you're referring to is when housing is done really, really badly. So, for example, if you give players banks in their homes, if you give players auction houses in their homes, if you give players the ability to mine or to hub or do anything like that, the secret to a good housing system is it has enough customization that keeps players busy for as many years as they want, right? And also, it never removes the core functions of player hubs within the game. So, a core function of a player hub is a bank. A core function of a player hub is a mailbox. A core function of a hub is an auction house. You don't want to have those things inside the housing system. You want the housing system to be purely cosmetic. And then what's most important is that all of the customizations for your housing system is somewhere out in the world. So in other words, players have to do dungeons because dungeon bosses drop some of the customizations. Maybe you add a profession like, for example, wood chopping. So players have to go out and chop wood in order to make certain types of furniture. Maybe you add to all of the in-game professions actual crafting recipes for housing items. So now players require crafters in order to do certain items for their home, right? So what you want to do with the housing system is you want to incorporate it into the whole of your game. The failure of garrisons was that garrisons sort of removed the player from the rest of the game. Like everything you needed to do, you could just do inside your garrison. And if you had, I remember having about 10 alts in World of Warcraft. If you had 10 alts in World of Warcraft, you were rich as shit just by mining and herbing your gardens and your mine inside your garrison. And just by doing a bunch of missions, you would get so much gold and so much gear, you never had to set foot outside the garrison. That is an example of a very badly designed housing system. You want one that encourages players to be out in the world, and the only time they retreat to their house is for something like an RP session, where they want to pretend like they're sucking someone's dick, or, a dancing or a club or a brothel or whatever the case may be, right? Whatever players want to do with their house, that's when you want them to go to their house. But for the most part, they're out in the world doing things in order to build their house. Abaddon, we spoke about 10.6. 10.26. What did I miss? I don't watch the weekly reset, so why do you ask? Oh, yeah, Abaddon, we already discussed it. Yeah, we're well aware. That was literally the first topic we discussed. 10.26 is coming next week. I feel like for a lot of players, and I fully understand this, but I think a lot of WoW players are sort of apprehensive about housing in World of Warcraft because for a lot of players, the only interaction that they have ever had with housing is garrisons. And so I fully understand the apprehension there. If garrisons is the only thing that you've ever had, that even resembles housing, dude, of course you're going to hate housing because it's shit, and it was shit. But if you do play a couple of games where housing is done super well, you realize it can be such a boon to the game, but also to the economy of a game. You make great points, and I don't disagree, but how about AFK players or people just chilling? I spend a lot of time in cities, but not always using core functions of the cities, like the bank. Well, Clabby, again, right? You have to weigh the potential... You have to weigh, for example, the potential risk versus reward there. Like, maybe, yes, you're going to have far fewer people just AFKing in the cities that they'd rather AFK inside their house. But then also at the same time, it's going to give people a lot more enjoyment in the game when they have that housing system. So rather have emptier cities, but people are having a lot more fun in the game than having full cities, but like 95% of the players there are just AFK for their entire play session because they have nothing to do. And even then, I would say if you were to poll the overwhelming majority of players, I would argue that most of the player base would probably not even build a house. Like, housing isn't actually it's not a universal thing. It's not like 100% of the player base is just immediately going to build a house. Like, maybe some people will sort of try it, right? Oh, what's this thing? Let me build a house. And then they'll go, this is bullshit. I'm going to go back to dungeons and raids. So they won't even ever go to their house. And you could even do a thing where you make it kind of difficult to get to your house. So you don't give players the ability to just instantly zoom to their house. They have to go to a main city hub. And from there, there's a portal that they go through, and that takes them to their house, right? So you can have that. That's another way of making sure that those players that do want to go to their house will go on and go into their house, but those players that actually want to go out and raid or dungeon, they're going to stay in the city, right? Because going to the house just means that they're going to have to come back to the city at some point. So it's just easier to stay in the city. So there's probably a lot of ways that you can actually run this to make sure that there are still people around. Adeline, how you doing? I've seen pictures from FF14 houses that it actually took me a minute to realize they were in a game. The amount of creativity that is allowed is amazing. Seeing people do haunted houses, aquariums, etc. Adeline, the houses in Final Fantasy XIV is sick. And since every house has its own neighborhood, effectively, you can load into any of the neighborhoods and walk through the streets and look at people's houses. And some people even leave their houses open so you can walk in and go check what's inside there, right? Which is like super cool. We've been in a couple of houses when I streamed Final Fantasy XIV. Gemini, no. I agree with you fully there. I understand why Final Fantasy XIV had the lottery system. They wanted to make houses feel valuable. And if you give everyone something, then that something has no value, right? But the problem is it makes it a lot worse because now the people that do want it can't have it. And that's shit. So, no, I would agree with you. If there is going to be a housing system in World of Warcraft, that has to be fully for everyone. Everyone can unlock it. Maybe you can have it as some kind of gold sink. So you have to have 20,000 gold or 50,000 gold. You buy your housing slot and bam, you have your house, right? That could work. Christopher, if it's done right, you can have that. Liam, not when you think about what is the core of player housing, right? So if garrisons is player housing, we have to start by asking, why is player housing? Player housing is about player expression. It's not about a player having a place that's their own in the world. That's not why people want player housing. It's about being able to express yourself in the game, right? This is why you give people character customization options. If player expression wasn't important, you wouldn't give players the ability to customize their characters, because why would you? You don't want people to be able to express themselves. So, for example, if you play Witcher 3, you can't customize Geralt. Why can't you customize Geralt? Because Geralt is Geralt. Like, you can't go fuck around with Geralt. Geralt is Geralt. Whereas you play World of Warcraft, you're playing you. And therefore, you have the ability to change you. Now, in the same vein, you want to be able to change your house to look the way that you want to look in the world. What you want to represent in the world. How you want it represented in the world. Instant portal in a capital is the minimum I'd need for housing. Yeah, I would argue that is probably the best way to do it. Like, I know a lot of people with housing would say, no, I need a button that can instantly take me to my house. But that does then mean that a lot of people might just go to their house when they're out in the world and just stay there, right? And that will probably mean the cities are a lot sort of like
$99
closed, right?
99 cents from Cloudy94. Good discussion. I'm a long-time lurker, first-time chatter. Keep up the good work.
Clabby, you bastard, with nearly $100 in the super chats. Ladies and gentlemen, hearts in chat for Clabby. Thank you so much for the $100. Really appreciate you, fam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm glad that you enjoy the conversation. That's the whole point of this show, is to have these conversations with you guys, because I don't get to have them nearly often enough. So I really appreciate the 100, man. Thank you so much. Like the caravan for the Volpera, but you can mix and match your traveling base. Yeah, you could do that too. Oh shit, that could actually be cool. Some kind of caravan where you can optimize your caravan, the Volpera caravan, you know? Dude, I still want a racing, like, goblin and gnome racing in World of Warcraft. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you get a dinky old fuck goblin or gnome vehicle, and then as you win races and make money, you can upgrade it with better engines. You know, like, you literally upgrade your little bike or car or whatever you choose, and you make it into, like, one of the fastest racers, and you just race against other people. Dude, that would be sick. That would actually be sick. It's not like Blizzard can't do it. They made Rock and Roll Racer. They should be able to make a racing game in World of Warcraft, no? You could... Abaddon, literally. You can literally call it GG Racing. Gregory, how you doing, brother? Not tonight, Gregory. Tonight we're doing Barrens Chat. But I promise you, if over the weekend the mood strikes me to play Ixion, I will go live on Twitch and we'll play Ixion. It may, because I still do want to play Ixion. So as soon as the mood strikes me, I will go live, right? So just keep your eye on Twitch. Well, you can keep your eye on Twitter as well, because I'll let you know there if I'm going live for Ixion. I will not play it without you. How about that? So I promise that if I feel like playing Ixion, I will not play it without you. VTX, let's not be mean here. Let's not throw stones and all that shit. Let's focus on the positives. Focus on the positives. Yes. They made StarCraft and Warcraft once upon a time. And yes. You may be having a point there. But we're not focusing on the point now. We're huffing copium. We're all here. We're having fun. We're dreaming about the things that could be. The woulda, shoulda, couldas. So let's not bog this down with facts and shit. Right? I don't want you ruining my dreams with facts. Mason, how you doing, bro? We already have the dragon races, but now what I want is fully customizable actual races. Like car races, but goblin and gnome racing. And Abaddon already gave us the name. GG Racing. That's what it's called in the game. And it's against either AI or other players. Like, you can literally do PvP AI racing, or you can do against other players. And what if you could make it so that vehicles can actually be destroyed? Not permanently, but in the race, you can actually run someone completely off the road, break their vehicle. So you have to upgrade your vehicle to do damage as well as go fast. Like, you can have the time of your fucking life with that shit. Like, dude, that would be a whole new meta for players. Mario Kart, but wow, exactly. Not that I've ever played Mario Kart, but I've watched videos of it before. The only time I've ever played Mario in my life was, I think, 8 or 9, maybe. And it was a knockoff. It was like a knockoff, like, cheap-ass game console thing that had Mario on it. One of those cartridges that had like 100 games on it. Overall, I don't play Mario or platformers really at all. I'm not a huge platformer player. Actually, I'm lying. I don't play platformers. And I don't really play racing games, but I will play one in WoW because I love chocobo racing in Final Fantasy XIV. In fact, I spent 3 days no-lifing chocobo racing in Final Fantasy XIV. Nick, how you doing, bro? Racing is all about the tune? Well, you could have that because Rock and Roll Racer is a thing. So you can have different music playing during the race. Oh, shit. No, but this is the thing, Riverall. You need to choose different vehicles and upgrade different vehicles because the maps are unique insofar as some maps are really good, for example, Mechanostriders. But then some maps are really good for just normal racers. And then some maps are really good for like off-road racers. So you have to have multiple vehicles that you upgrade so that you can actually partake in all of the races. Oh, nice too, but it's weird how they implemented it. If you want to race with other people at the same time, the sign-up stuff sucks. I have not raced against other people in dragon riding ever. Jabud, I want to be clear. I know Blizzard made Rock and Roll Racer. I'm not old enough to have played it. I have never played it. Dude, I'm old, but I'm not that fucking old. I'm still a millennial, right? I'm on the cusp. Like, I'm on the level of millennial to the other generation. Stuff for dynamic riding? Yeah, we know that dynamic riding is in the game files. So there's clearly some kind of ground mount thing coming. We just don't know if that is just a shard of something else, or if that is just, if that is actually a feature coming at some point. Old enough to know? Holy shit, Elodie. Yeah, I'm definitely not old enough to know. Also, I grew up in South Africa. We didn't have Nintendo and shit like that when I was growing up. So, yeah, that shit is completely alien to me. The first consoles I had were those knockoff Chinese consoles that had the cartridge with like 100 games on it. And then the first PC my dad ever bought was a 386. Right? And this was before the days of Windows. So you just had DOS and you had to install floppy disks. And then I thought we were super cool when we got the first stiffy disk drive. And I knew one other guy in my school that also had a computer, and he still had floppy disks. And I was like, bro, like, seriously, you're living in the fucking Stone Age, bro. Like, stiffies are so much better. And then I'll never forget it when my dad finally upgraded us to the first ever Pentium 1. Like, bro, Pentium 1? What? Holy shit. So yeah, I went through all the early iterations of PC, and also that's when I fell in love with PC games, was because of my dad. Dad at True G. Oh yeah, my dad was a super gamer, bro. Like my dad's a medical doctor, and he used to come home at like 3:00 in the afternoon, because he had his own practice. He still has his own practice, not had. He has his own practice, and so he would come home at 3:00 in the afternoon. Then he would start playing video games, and then we would sit next to him because he was playing Diablo. I remember, this is the memory I have, but he played other games before that. Like, he was a huge fan of Age of Empires and stuff like that. Massive Age of Empires fan, massive American Conquest fan. Like, he loved American Conquest. But he played Diablo, and we were allowed to play, but not when he was playing. So me and my brother, we would sit and watch my dad, and then like from 3:00, we would sit next to my dad and we would watch him play Diablo, and then my mom would bring us coffee, and then she would bring us dinner, and then my dad would play until like 12. Like, we had to go to bed already, and then my dad would still play like 12, 1, 2:00 in the morning. Then the next morning when you wake up, we would have breakfast, and then my dad would be on the computer, and he would play games until like 10, 11, quickly rush to the office, see like a couple of patients, and then be back at 3 to play. And he would just, like, he had people stand in for him, that he would pay people to work on his behalf so that he could sit and play video games. And then he realized he may be addicted to video games. So then he stopped completely, and he's never touched a PC again. Nowadays, he doesn't even know how they work. He genuinely doesn't know how anything works. He knows how WhatsApp works, though. He sends me a shit ton of videos and messages on WhatsApp daily. Which is sick for me. Your dad fell off? Yeah. He sort of he realized that he would not be able to lead a normal life and still play video games because he just got addicted to them. No, he won't do it anymore. Now he's on the farm and he's farming with cows and shit. So that's what he enjoys now. So yeah, whenever I phone him, he's not at the practice. He's with his cows building fucking enclosures and I don't know, what do you call it? Giving them vaccines and shit. I don't know. He's doing weird shit now on the farm. Yeah, my dad likes the farm, man. He's living his best life. I used to play Street Fighter with my dad back then. Good old times. The adult's way of grinding. Yeah, dude, farm work is not fun. That is a lot of work. Like, working on a farm, that is some next level shit. Like, seriously. It's a lot of heavy lifting. But right, ladies and gentlemen, did you guys enjoy the first episode of Barrens Chat? Did you find it enjoyable? Next week, we're going to do a bit more speculation, by the way, just to warn you all. There's going to be a lot more speculation. There's going to be a lot more theory discussion next week because I have a couple of videos coming up and we're probably going to be discussing those for a bit. I used to play fantasy battle chess game with my dad. Archon, I think it was called. That sounds familiar. Dude, that sounds very familiar. Like, definitely. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. I'm really glad that you guys enjoyed it. Now, for all of you that came out, that hung out with me, that decided to spend your afternoon or mornings with me, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. To those of you that I will not see until next week, have a wonderful weekend as well as a wonderful week. For those of you that I will see on Twitch over the weekend, if I do find myself in the mood to play some Ixion, I will see you on Twitch. Otherwise, I will see all of you on Monday for the official return of the Twitch streams. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to each other, be good to each other, and remember, I have a video that's going live right now. As I'm ending the stream, I'm making that video public. So go watch that. Peace.